Hello, my loves. This is Gabriella Fox, and you are now listening to Rededication. I know it has been a while since I released my first episode, but uh, y'all are I was not ready to speak about part two of my testimony, okay? When I tell y'all I have stories for days, like I have stories for days. But when was the last time I released my first episode? It was was it April? I think it was like around the end of April. Y'all, I really had to take that, was it 3 months? April, May, June, July, August. 4 months. It was 4 months. I really had to take those 4 months to really reflect on what I've been through, to really reflect on what is true, what's not true, and to really get to know not only God, but myself again. Because in 2 Corinthians 5:17 it says, "Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creature. The old things have passed away. Behold, new things have come." And I'm going to get a little bit more into that as I continue to speak. But we left off on the time that I started following him and listening to what he was saying. I remember February, I went to a concert with one of my friends. If you were curious as to which concert it was Smino and Jid. I had a lot of fun, but it was also a really reflective time for me, because that was a time where I realized, like, this is a life that was not meant for me. And you may realize that the title of this podcast is The Enemy's Plan versus God's Plan. Right after I got back from that concert is when I started hearing God's voice and when he started instructing me to follow him. We'll get back to the story about the concert, but now I'm going to move forward just a little bit, but I'm going to come back though, don't worry. And we're going to talk about what happened afterwards. I was with my roommates, we were doing a little photo shoot or whatever. And I was just all cute, and I was setting up the backdrop and the camera and everything, and I was on the phone with a friend from school, actually. I don't really talk to him that much anymore, but I was on the phone with him. And, I was talking about how much I love spirituality and how I consider myself a spiritualist and how I just love how it makes me feel, this, that, and the third. And I remember him saying, be careful with that stuff, I don't want to tell you what to do or anything, but, and I was like, wait, like, what do you mean be careful with it? And part of me was like, genuinely curious. The other part of me was like, I know where he's going with this. But he just started talking about how he used to be involved in that stuff, and then he started reading his Bible. And some people, when they hear about Christianity, they'll literally just start getting angry. I wasn't angry. I actually felt a lot of conviction after he told me that, like, in my heart. And then I told him, well, I still read my Bible, I still have it in my room. Like, I'm not totally away from God, Mind you, because I never really rejected him. So I feel like he's always kind of been in the background, but I wasn't really taking directions from him. So that's where I was. Yeah, he was telling me, yeah, I just started reading my Bible more and got closer to God, but now I don't do that anymore. And that's all he said. And so after that conversation, I was like, that's interesting. For a moment, I forgot about it, but I don't know if it was a couple days later, I picked up my Bible again, because I was like, I definitely read my Bible. I don't know what this guy's talking about. Like, I was just in denial about it a little bit. I really felt convicted, and that really caused me to read my word. Now, there are other signs from God and other people God sent into my life to get me away from those practices. So I was reading my Bible, and, I talked about the scripture from First Kings when King Solomon was about to become king, and he was speaking to God about how he should lead his people. And God told him that because you have a desire to gain knowledge and wisdom on guiding your people, I will not only give you that, but I'll give you abundance as well, essentially. I can't remember which scripture that was. I think it was 1 Kings 1:10. Don't quote me on that. I might be wrong. Absolutely. But that's what I think it was. Now, this was around the time where I was posting on my stories about how to strengthen your intuition, how to realign your chakras, what's spiritual warfare, how to do shadow work, all of these things, y'all. And so he told me, yeah, I'll give you that. You can rely on me to give you that. And I was like, wow, cool. Like, I opened the Bible, I read a scripture, and I feel like I could actually connect to it, because before I even knew Jesus, I would just read the Bible, but I had no context of what was going on and no understanding of him or the stories. This was when I was young though. But anyways, so now that you know that, let's go back to the weekend I went to that concert with my friend. We had the same spiritual beliefs, still hold a lot of love for her. The morning after the concert, we talked, we did homework and everything, and we were looking up healing bowls. We were looking up healing bowls, and I was always talking about how I always wanted one, and how Jhené Aiko, one of my favorite artists, during that time, I loved her. I definitely idolized her, but I don't listen to her anymore because God does not want me to. Anyways, we had just found out that she was releasing her own line of crystal healing bowls. And we were just talking about how much I wanted one and how much I wanted to, have one because of the benefits of having one, And we were talking about how expensive it probably was, which led me and her actually to looking up the prices of sound bowls on eBay. So I stared at it for a while on my screen, and then I just bought them like on impulse. No, it was not the same amount that Jhené Aiko priced hers, but it was a fair amount. I think it was like $50 for 2 of them. I want to say that's still a lot of money that I ended up having to throw out. But I bought those bowls, and so now that I told you that, fast forward back to the time where I was reading my word. God was telling me while I was reading to follow him, to let him guide the way. And as I'm sitting in his presence is very strong, by the way. Very strong. It felt like he was just staring directly down at me. I asked him, what about my healing bowls? Can I still use them? He said, if you use your healing bowls, I will not use you. And then I was like, but I paid so much for them, God. Like, you're really going to let my money go to waste? I can't send them back now. By this time, I don't think they were here yet. They were in transit, but they weren't here yet. And he just repeated it again. If you use the sound bowls, I will not use you. I didn't know what else to say to that. I felt a bit scared, actually. It gave me a sense of fear, and kind of like a sense of fear in a way where I knew that I was talking to someone with much more authority than I had, who had way more authority than my so-called spirit guide had, and had way more authority than anyone or anything could have. Like, I knew I was talking to God. And I was a bit afraid, because I really thought that meant giving up the things that I came to love. That's what it did mean. And now that is what life is about when we come to Christ. We give up our old ways, and we sacrifice that part of ourselves to be reborn again, which is what I kind of just referenced from 2 Corinthians 5:17. But it was that moment where you were told to leave everything behind to follow him. And part of me was like, man, like, that's crazy, because it's all I've ever known. It's all I've idolized, and I thought that it was good for me. But I knew that he had better for me. I knew that he had better plans for me. And so that's when I started to, read his word more and understand who he was. I could still hear him. I was also hearing what he was saying, and I was also hearing what my quote unquote spirit guide was saying too. Around this time, he didn't tell me that entity was actually a demon, that spirit was a demon, and that it had nothing to do with what he was doing for me. So I was thinking those two were working together for me. This is what I was thinking about when I thought about it. And for those next few weeks, I let God take control of my life and what I did throughout the day. I didn't base it on any spiritual practices. I didn't meditate in the mornings like I would used to. I didn't put my reliance on my chakra incense, and I didn't do any of those things. And he proved to me that he was God in a couple ways. In one way, I was coming back from the movies. I had a really peaceful day, and I went to the garden where I would usually go. It was supposed to be closed. It's usually closed on a Saturday. On Saturdays they're closed, but he told me to go this Saturday, and I didn't know why. So I pulled into the parking lot, and I saw that somebody was getting married, and I was like, oh, I wish I could watch. And so he told me to get out the car, and I just went into the garden, and everybody saw me, but I I think a couple of them knew that I was crashing their wedding. It didn't start yet, but I saw a glimpse of the groomsmen buttoning up their wrist, their cuffs on their shirts, and taking pictures. And I got a glimpse of the bridesmaids and everyone there. And then I left. And I just sat in my car because I was like, wow, like I really wish I could stay for this wedding. Is there any way where I could like actually witness what's going on? And I sat there for maybe like 10 minutes. And then I was told to get out again. And so I got out. And over by the entrance, there was a woman, and she was carrying boxes full of stuff. And she asked me, hey, are you in the wedding? Or were you invited to the wedding? And I was like, yeah, I am. And she said that she really needed help, and she was carrying all of these, she was carrying drinks and cups and napkins and a bunch of stuff that she needed to help serve the guests for, I'm assuming, the reception. And so I was like, yeah, I can help you if you need help. And she was like, thank you so much. And so, I carry the boxes, and we go over to the area where the tables are set up and everything. And I get to know her name. She tells me her name, and I tell her my name. And she tells me that she's actually a bartender for the reception. And I thought that was really cool. And so then, at that point, I felt comfortable telling her, okay, I'm not in the wedding, nor am I anyone's family member. I'm just here. And she just started laughing. And she said, that's okay. And so, yeah, God really gave me a way to be involved somehow in that wedding, in that union. And I just felt so lucky. And so I just helped her set up because she told me that the wedding was starting soon and everything. So I helped set the tables up. I helped set her little bar up, the cups and the drinks and everything. And she actually ran out of Coke at one point. Oh, no, she didn't run out, but she never had any Coke. So I ran out to Walmart because it was like right around the corner. I bought her some Coke, and I came back and I gave it to her, and that was that. And then by the time I left, the wedding had already started. But right before I left, I saw the bride and the groom, and they looked so beautiful. The bride looked amazing, and it just made me so happy just to see them. They were kissing each other and telling each other how much they loved each other and how lucky they were to be married to each other. It was really sweet. And that was one of God's, I don't want to say one of God's miracles because it's not a miracle, but I feel like that was one example how God proved to me that he was God, and that he works in perfect timing. And I have so many other stories about how perfect his timing always is. That was a day that I won't forget, because how everything was just planned out perfectly by him. So fast forward to spring break, which was around the middle of March, I believe. I spent time with my roommate and her friend, and at one point we started talking about, spirituality and stuff. We were sitting in the car, and my roommate told me, like, hey, Gabby, are you like a Christian now? Because you've been listening to a lot of gospel music. Because from that point forward, after I spoke to God, I've been listening to gospel music, listening to nothing but gospel music, actually. I went on a little secular music fast, I'm just now realizing, for maybe a week or two. And I've been listening to it while I was in the shower too. So I would just blast it while I'm in the shower. And I told her, like, yeah, I'm kind of following him now. And my roommate and her friend were just shocked at what they were hearing. And they're like, what, Gabby, you've always been the free-spirited sort of person. And I was like, yeah, I was, but I realized that that's the truth now. And that the stuff I was into was not really that good, And I told them about how I bought some sound bowls and how God told me to get rid of them. And my roommate was like, but aren't the sound bowls supposed to be like healing? Aren't they supposed to be like really good for you? And I was like, yeah, but that's not what God wants for us. That's not of God. And then she was like, what about yoga? Isn't yoga just stretching? And I was like, yeah, I also teach yoga, so I don't know what I'm going to do about that. And she was like, but what if, and then her roommate mentioned chakras. She was a big believer in chakras. And I was like, I don't think I believe in that anymore either. And as we were talking about the changes that I have made, they also started talking about how Jesus was a white man, how Christianity is a white man religion, and really about how the Bible was translated too many times and was rewritten, and how it's not real, and how other people wrote the Bible, and all of these common arguments that you hear from people who are not believers. These are the common arguments that you hear. And I was just sitting there. I don't remember what exactly I was feeling. I knew that I was a bit irritated. I don't know if that was because they were dogging on my God, or or if they made me feel like a fool for following God. And then she asked me about slavery, and she was like, why do you think God let slavery happen? And I was like, I don't know, free will, I guess. And all of them, and both of them, they were listening to my answer. I don't quite remember what I said. And I don't know, I wanted to say like what the truth was, or like what I thought was the truth about it, but I don't know, it felt like it was all a test in a way. She was talking to me about how it was a safe space, and how we're just having an open conversation about religion and stuff. And I was like, okay, but we'll get onto its story. But yeah, so we were just talking about that in the car, and all I could remember thinking, because I wasn't that knowledgeable, I didn't have enough wisdom to really give answers to these questions and to really defend God. And I remember just asking God, like, dang, God, like, what do I say? Tell me what to say. Tell me what's real. Tell me what's the truth. And I got on my notes that because I felt something in my spirit, or in my chest rather, and I thought he was going to tell me something. I think I typed out, tell them that they'll not see my kingdom of heaven. And mind you, this is like before I discovered what discernment was and whether or not I needed discernment. And so I'm pretty sure it was an enemy, considering that I was still into in New Age stuff, and I still had that in my presence. But I just remember thinking that, and that's what I wrote down. And from that moment forward, I started hearing what I was hearing stuff from different spirits on what to tell certain people. And I really thought this was cool, because I thought that I was able to talk to different angels. I thought they were angels at first, guys. I thought I was literally talking to different spirit guides for different people. and I thought that I was able to help them in some way. Y'all, I was so excited. I was like, yay, like I get to do this. And then I was revealed the truth about it all. And that was hard, of course. But yeah, so from that moment forward, I would hear things from different voices and different spirits telling me to say this to your brother, or say this to your mother, say this to your friend, say this to whoever. And a lot of the times when I would type them out and send them to certain people, they'll say that it's true. They're like, oh my gosh, like this really resonated with me. Thank you so much. And one of the main person who I spoke to about this was my brother, my older brother. And I feel like he really understood, and he was really there for me during this time. And it really connected the both of us. I'm going to get into this in a different episode, but I feel like God was using me in a way to help bring my family closer to God and to really help unify our family again. Because although we were family and we laughed and we have a family group chat and stuff, I really feel like I grew closer to my siblings because of it. Before, I didn't really talk to my siblings like that on a really intimate level, and I didn't really know much about their lives. And we kind of lived our separate lives. We speak to each other when we speak to each other, but we didn't really have a close relationship or close connection as you might think. Especially because I have a twin brother too. It wasn't as close as everyone thought it was, and like God really brought me close to my family through through saving me. And so from that moment forward, I began telling my roommates. I'm gonna consider her a roommate too because she would visit often. I would tell my roommates what I would hear, and I would tell them like what they were saying, and it really came to a point where I would hear certain things and people would tell me, Gabby, that's not true. What are you talking about? And it would leave a lot of people confused. And I was also confused because I was like, what do you mean? I'm hearing this from God. Like, what are you talking about? What do you mean it doesn't make sense? I did not know that demons could speak to you as well. And it came to a point where I was saying a lot of things to people that I didn't want to say. And I was scared. I was forced. I don't want to say I was forced. I didn't have a gun held up to my. I didn't have a gun held up to my head or anything. But it really came to a point where I was saying things I didn't want to say to certain people, but I felt like I had to say it anyway because I thought that I was going to anger God, and I thought that I was going to spend eternity in hell for not saying it. But y'all already know that was the enemy, I didn't have that discernment. And whenever I would say it to my roommate specifically, I would feel so afraid to like speak on it like right before saying it. And as soon as I'd say it, I immediately knew like God did not want me to say this. Like, why would I feel this way if he wanted me to say this stuff, Like, why would he give me so much pain while speaking his messages? And I had my family help me and guide me on this because they believed that it was the spirit of they believed that I was prophetic and that I had this gift. If you guys didn't remember from my last episode, I talked about how I went to church with one of my good friends, and I don't know if you guys remember this from my last episode, but I mentioned going to church with one of my good friends, and we went to this prophetic revival, and the pastor blew on my face, spoke in tongues, pushed back on my head, and that was that. And so we really believe that that was the reason why I had this gift, because he blew on my head. But anyways, another instant where my parents knew, despite me saying wrong things sometimes, was I was on the phone with my mother and my brother for 12 hours actually. And I was just writing down everything that I was being told to say to them. My mother started talking about her father. I think I started writing out stuff about her father and about how her father was doing certain things at a certain time, and my mother was like, no, he didn't. He never did that. Da, 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 da. And so it was like I was being told that her father, that my grandfather had done this and that and this and that. I was being told that my grandfather was doing all of these things and that he did X, Y, and Z. I'm not going to say what. And she was like, we're going to call Granny. We're going to call your grandmother. And so we waited about 45 minutes for my grandmother to get on the phone. And she confirmed all of it. And that is how my mom suspected that I could have been prophetic. But I remember another day, I had gotten off the phone with my brother. I was writing down, you are psychic. This is your gift. And now looking back, that was definitely the enemy, because Leviticus 19:31 says, do not go to mediums or necromancers. They'll make your spirits unclean. And, mediums claim the term psychic. And, psychiatry, is that even a word, psychiatry? And, being psychic is not of God. That's of the enemy. Everything that God has, the enemy loves to copy. So just like God has prophets who speak, who are, mouthpieces for God, the enemy also has people for that as well. But all gifts come from God, of course. When God revealed this gift to me, the enemy instantly pulled me into using it for him rather than for God. And it even led me to calling my brother's ex and writing out long paragraphs to her mother about things that just weren't true. I was being told to say so many things that were just not true. And every time that I felt like it wasn't true, every time I got anxiety and fear, like I was just told to keep going. It felt like word vomit in a way. Like, the gagging that you feel like right before you vomit? It felt like that, except words were coming out of me. And I thought that was God. Discernment is really something that everyone needs now, looking back at that. But yeah, like I would always get this word vomit. I would always feel forced or feel a force I would always feel words being forced out of my mouth. I would always feel words being forced out of my mouth, literally. And it would be so draining, y'all. It would feel so draining. I would feel like all the energy being leached out of me because of it. And it was just a really hard time in my life because I lost a lot of people. I rubbed a lot of people the wrong way for the things I've said. And I didn't even mean to. All because I thought God wanted me to say these things. And I was just so eager to have a gift like that and to be able to potentially help people by what God was telling me to do and with this gift. I just really felt so eager and so excited to have it that I just didn't have the proper discernment to know whether or not I was really hearing God or whether I was hearing these demons, And it really came to a point where I had aggravated my roommate, how I scared my roommate through it, and that was a really dark period in my life. And it was actually like a few days before I was properly saved. I had thrown my bowls out. I had thrown my homemade deck of cards out. I threw away anything that had a mandala on it. I threw away all of my all of my chakra and yoga books I had. I threw away all of those things, and there was this tapestry I had too. Fun fact. It is a bad idea to hang up any tapestries on your wall. It's really bad to hang up faces on your walls that you don't know, especially like people that you don't know. I had a tapestry of a painting one of my favorite painters at the time had painted, and it was a naked woman covered in flowers, and in the middle of the night that face would turn into a skull, but I never thought anything of it because I thought I was just asleep. I wasn't aware that spirits are active. The spiritual realm is active when you're asleep. I had no idea about that. But I would always see that. And when I was throwing stuff out, I threw that tapestry out. I had a shirt, an astrology shirt that was specific for my zodiac sign, which was Taurus. And I threw that out as well. And as soon as I threw all of that out, I felt so much better. I felt lightness in my room. I stepped into my room and I felt lightness. The day that I was saved on Easter, I'm going to go through that day. I went to church with my friend. While I was at church, I was hearing many things. I was writing them down in my Bible and showing them to my friend during the service. And I was just writing down many things that I couldn't discern what was God and what wasn't God. We got back from church, and this was like right before I was delivered. And I went to my friend's house. I had agreed that I would go see her mother and her grandmother after church. And I was just telling her, and I was just crying. I was just crying to her about how I felt like I was crazy and how I never even meant to hurt anyone and how I thought I was really helping people. And I was just telling her what's been happening to me the past couple of days. I talked about this in my first episode about how I was feeling fearful and how I had a spirit of fear within me and all of these things. She prayed for me. During the prayer, she told me, or she was praying in the middle of the prayer, she was saying how she wanted protection on the left side of my body. And right after she said that, my left arm started tingling. Y'all, it started tingling. After she prayed, I felt a spirit of fear, and it felt as if there was something behind me. At one point we were talking, I saw a dark spot behind me. I feel like from the corner of my eye, it was definitely a demon, and it was definitely the entity that has been attached to me that I thought was my spirit guide. I saw a face and everything, but as soon as when I whipped back behind me, nothing was there. Never told anyone about that. I don't even think I mentioned that in my TikTok video. I actually have a TikTok video explaining everything that happened to me on Easter and how I was saved. But if you want to check that out, you can. But long story short, we drove to her parents' house. I was speaking to my auntie and my cousin on the phone, who have also been helping me during this rough period in my life because, they knew God better than I did, and they were just guiding me through this prophetic gift that was being revealed to me. And so they started praying over me. They started doing a protection prayer over me, and I bowed my head. I started listening to them. Right after we finished praying, I accepted salvation. My auntie was telling me to repeat after her about how I believe in Jesus Christ. I believe that He is the Son of God, that He died on the cross, and 3 days later He resurrected and came back from the dead. I was accepting salvation, and the full story of that day is on TikTok if you guys want to watch it. My TikTok is Gabriella S. Fox. But a lot of freaky things were happening while I was getting saved. But, I was crying, I was wailing, and I felt God's presence, and I felt burning. I felt just a burning feeling throughout my entire body. I also felt this a few days before, whenever I would get a spirit of fear, it was also accompanied by a burning feeling within me. And I feel like that was God's protection over me. I feel like it was a bit of spiritual warfare in a sense where the enemy was trying to scare me and trying to get me to think that God didn't have my back when He did. Yeah, guys, that is my testimony of how I was saved. And in my next episode, I'll do a check-in video, I guess, on where I am now. I'm doing well, if you're wondering. But from that point, it was very hard because that was when I had to separate what was real, what was God, and what wasn't God. And when I realized that all of the things I said were not from God, I was just hard on myself for months. For months, I just felt so much torment. I gave myself so much torment because I scared so many people, and I just became someone that I never wanted to become. I made so many people uncomfortable and made a fool of myself, I may even say. All because of the enemy and because I was into the new age spirituality craft. And if you're wondering, like, if you're trying to think of an excuse of everything I went through, I just want to tell you this. Even if we had spirit guides we could talk to and that could guide us, right? Why would they give us pain and torment for following the one true God? If they really were our spirit guides, they wouldn't give us a sense of fear, a sense of anxiety, and they wouldn't give us pain, you know? I feel like if it were true, if those new age beliefs were true, I would have never felt what I felt. I would have never felt any anxiety or fear speaking on the truth, and I would have never seen a demon behind me, and I just would have never felt that sense of fear and in my spirit like I had before, and I wouldn't have caused so much harm towards the people around me, you know? And I'm just gonna leave it there. I know this was a bit long, but I hope it was good enough for you to listen to anyway. Thank you guys so much for listening. I will be back with another episode, okay? Hopefully it won't be after another 4 months, but it will definitely be over more of what I've learned thus far. And I hope you guys have an amazing day. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.